Overture, curtain lights, this is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every part by heart. Overture, curtain lights, this is it. We'll hit the heights, and oh, what heights we'll hit. On with the show, this is it.
Hey everybody, it's Goose Scott back with another edition of On the Show. Sorry we're so late today. We've had some crazy things happening as far as scheduling is concerned, and a lot of crazy stuff going on in Kern County politics that I've been having to go out and cover for kerncast.com. It's been a lot of fun. What do you say, Tyler? We've been having fun taking care of all this.
It felt long.
It felt long. But anyway, as the title says, I want the show, and again, we're not going to have any posters today because it has been, like I said, for me, it has been absolutely crazy trying to get everything set up for today, and I've been watching a lot of movies, and the big movie that I saw this week that opens is Equalizer 2. And this is, of course, the sequel to the Equalizer that came out about 2 or 3 years ago, starring Denzel Washington as a man with a particular set of skills and a particular code that he lives by. In the first Equalizer, he runs into a young prostitute who is being abused, and he uses his skills to get her out of the situation that he's in. In this particular Equalizer, we find out more about him and his background. This is more of a character study in this film than the previous one. We do get to see some of his particular set of skills when someone crosses his moral boundary, which is always great to see. But we get to find out that Denzel Washington's character, he's a Marine. He used to be involved in government espionage, and he still holds that true thing to where he wants to keep those around him on the right path, and we see him do that with a particular young man in his building, trying to keep him out of the gangs, trying to keep him on the straight and narrow. But when one of his friends is murdered, he goes to find out what happens, and that's when, of course, as they like to say, all hell breaks loose. And all this happens...
When the poop hits the fan.
When the poop hits the fan. And all this happens while an approaching hurricane comes, and we find out that, here's a guy who was very devoted to his wife, who he lost. And we also come to find out that Denzel Washington's character is supposed to be dead. He faked his own death. And it's I'll give you a little bit of a teaser. But the only thing I had a problem with this film is it tended to kind of lag. It was a character study, but there are times where it was like it took way too long for things to develop. But once they did, the action really started picking up. And we really started to see what this movie was about. It's a really different film than the first one. The first one was more of an action film. This one's more of a detective story. And you're gonna have to go in with this film knowing that this is going to be a little different than the first film. I mean, again, he does have his certain set of skills, but this film kind of is more of a slow boil to take in, and you're really going to have to pay attention to know what's going on. I did have a bit of a problem because there are times where the plot line kind of moved from person to person, kind of kept things a little difficult to follow. But in the end, when things kind of got tied up, it was nice to see how things kind of really, really worked in the end. Is there going to be another Equalizer film? Don't know, but it will be interesting to see if one does come out in another couple of years. Denzel Washington, who's, again, one of the best actors of his generation, I believe that, if he's behind it, they'll do it. All right, moving right along. There's a lot of movies that opened up at the Redbox. I talked about A Quiet Place last week. And, of course, let me tell you something. My kids hadn't seen it. They saw it for the first time. They loved it, of course. But when anybody made a noise, we just look at them and go, "You're dead," because they'd be dead. And that's the kind of thing,
especially when with our Uncle Larry.
Yeah, my stepdad Larry is staying with us. He's super deaf, and every time, whenever people say something, he's like, "Are you talking to me?" We're like, "No, we're not talking."
Or he goes, "Huh?
Huh?" So he'd
Sorry,
be dead.
people.
Well, he'd be dead, you know. So but it is kind of comical. I do continue to recommend you see it. But again, I told you like last week, you're going to have to see it very quiet, in a place where it's real quiet. Another movie that came out in the Red Box that I previewed in the theaters, I Feel Pretty. And this was the Amy Schumer film, the comedy. And again, I really liked this film. I thought it was one of the most honest films out there today, especially when it comes to body image and body shaming, and how there were a lot of references to Big in this film. There were a lot of references to Shallow Hal in this film. But it's one of those films that I enjoyed watching. My wife saw it with me last night, as well as my son, my other son, not my producer, Tyler. But and he liked it. And again, I feel it's one of the most honest films out there. I know there are a lot of people who are saying it's one of the worst films of this year. I don't understand why. I think maybe because they just maybe don't either get the film, or they're expecting something from Amy Schumer that wasn't funny in this film. This one was really, really heartfelt, and it was a really good journey for her to go through in this film. Another film that's at the Red Box that I really, really super, super, super wanted to see and got a chance is Happy Death Day. And Happy Death Day is very quickly, it's a horror film wrapped up in Groundhog's Day. I know this sounds crazy, but they actually reference Groundhog's Day at the very end of the film. But it's basically this young co-ed gets murdered, and she keeps reliving. And what's funny is it's her birthday, so she keeps reliving the day over and over and over again until she figures out who kills her. Now, I'm not going to tell you who does, but the film does a great job of dropping all those breadcrumbs of who it might be and who it might not be and who, and it's one of these. It's considered it's labeled as a slasher film. I didn't see a lot of slashing in it. I did see a lot of, there was blood. I mean, it wasn't like a hack 'em up, chop 'em up kind of film. But it was really, really well done. It was also humorous in some parts. But what makes this film really work, not just because, and again, the plot's not original. It's been done before. But it's the fact that they took this and they wrapped it around a horror slasher genre type film. The mask guy is the big baby is what we called him because he wore a baby mask. And he was the big baby, and he was like, it took all the tropes of all the different horror films that you've seen as for when it comes to a young college co-ed that's being hunted by a killer. You look at movies like Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Here is someone that's being hunted by a killer, and she has to keep reliving the experience until she figures out who kills her. It's brilliant. Yeah. And even people who are not into horror films love this. What did you think of it?
It was really interesting. I mean, like the one thing I can say about it is that it was really entertaining, and the other thing, bad at this, but one thing I can say about it is that it was well done.
It was well done.
The one thing that made me shout no is when she got locked in the back of a cop car and it exploded.
Yeah, don't give too much of the film away, but it was absolutely brilliantly done.
I apologize if I did spoil something.
But it's really good. If you're not into horror films, you'll love this one. It's really smart. Like I said, it's not an original idea, but the way it's wound up makes it really smart to do. Anyway, we're going to go to a very quick break. When I come back, we're going to talk about 3 films I caught searching through the channels, a couple of classic films, one that's an independent film that got really well reviews. I'll tell you about it right on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
I choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
We choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
We choose Patriot Bail Bonds.
If the best criminal attorneys choose Patriot Bail Bonds, who would you choose?
Patriot Bail Bonds. We fight for your freedom.
Your home is perfect. Until it's not. We understand that life has its changes. As your family grows, we're here to help grow with you. Because taking care of your family is important to you and important to us. Your story starts here with Cornerstone Mortgage.
And we're back. This is Goose Scott with On With a Show here at the beautiful Bakersfield Music Hall of Fame and CurrentCast.com. I want to tell you about some movies that I was flipping through the channels for. And one of them was an independent film that came out a couple of years ago about Chuck Webner called Chuck. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you click Chuck, just Chuck, on Google, you're going to see the TV show Chuck, which I will tell you is a good TV show. I mean, it's a really good TV show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too.
But Chuck is based on the boxer Chuck Wepner and his fight against Muhammad Ali, and how that fame transformed him into something that he ultimately didn't want to be. He ended up becoming. Basically what happens is Chuck Webner, the boxer Chuck Webner is he's a liquor salesman from New Jersey. I can't remember what the name of the town is. From New Jersey. He's a part-time boxer. He's in the top 10. He's supposed to fight George Foreman for the title, who he thinks. And what happens is that Foreman gets knocked out by Muhammad Ali in the infamous fight with the rope-a-dope, and he ends up. He thinks he's not going to fight Ali for the title, except he ends up fighting Ali for the title, and that one fight, he said, all I want to do is go the whole distance. That one fight propelled him to fame that he could not handle. He could not handle, and he ended up losing his wife, his daughter. He fell into womanizing and alcohol and drugs. And then he comes to find out that they're making a movie about his called Rocky. Now, Rocky's one of the best films you could see ever. Okay. If you haven't seen Rocky,
it's an awesome movie.
It's an awesome film, but they find out, and then he thinks that this will help him, get back on his feet financially. Only it ends up making him more famous, and he's not making a lot more money. It's just people are becoming hangers on, and he's getting deeper into drugs, and he's losing his. Of course, he's lost his wife. He can't, because of his womanizing, he can't get another woman that he wants to date. It becomes absolutely crazy, and he ends up falling in what I almost would have call the pit of despair. He ends up in prison, which when he ends up in prison is the wake up call. Now, none of it. When I first thought about this movie, because it basically talked about the fight, so I thought it was going to be like a boxing movie that talks about the fight. But that's only part of it. And then it talks about what happens after the fight. And it talks about what happens during, when the movie's made and all this other stuff. And you see this guy just literally fall into,
It sounds kind of like he was falling into in a swirl of nothingness. Of
nothingness. Let me tell you something. What the theme of this movie is something that people should really see, especially young people, because people want to be famous. People want to be famous for some stupid reason. They want to be famous.
Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah, and so this is, and we all hear about the stories about people who couldn't handle their fame. This is one of them. And he ends up, the only way he can end up resurrecting his life and winning the woman that he loves, that ends up becoming his second wife, is he had to go to prison. He had to hit rock bottom to go to prison and build himself up again. This movie, it stars Liv Schreiber, Elizabeth Moss, who puts in one of the best performances I've ever seen her do, Naomi Watts, Ron Perlman, Jim Gaffigan, all of these guys do a fantastic job in this film. If you have a chance to sit down, and again, it's not your typical boxing movie. So you're going to have to be prepared because it's going to be a little different. But I think if you really want to know about independent filmmaking, this is a really, really good film, and you'll really, really will love getting behind this. I've been watching a lot of really good movies lately, so for me, this is really good. Another movie that I had a chance to see, and this is a classic, it won the Best Picture in 1978, and that is The Deer Hunter. Now, the people are like, oh my God, this is an old film, again, 1978. This stars a young Robert De Niro, a young Christopher Walken, a young Meryl Streep. These are all people who were like in the early part of their careers. And it basically is about three guys that go off to Vietnam and how it affects them. That's the film. Now, I want to warn you about one thing. This film is 3 hours long. It shouldn't be 3 hours long. It should only have been about two and a half hours long. But for some reason, and I'm going to butcher the director's name, Michael yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
What was the name again?
Michael Simonino.
Well, then call him Michael then.
Right, we'll just call him Michael C. So Michael C, he has this huge first act that's basically a wedding and a reception. And there's a lot of dancing. And a lot of dancing. And a lot of dancing.
Dancing.
Yeah, and it's like I'm waiting for it to get to the next. I'm waiting for it to get to the next part of the film, and it never does. I think though what does happen is because the reason Deer Hunter is so endearing to a lot of filmmakers' hearts is because the great performances by De Niro and Walken and Street and John Savage. I believe John Savage won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And let me just tell you, Vietnam was still in the hearts and minds of people back in the late 70s, even when Vietnam had ended. And so to do pictures of Vietnam was not unheard of. And I think this is a good film for people to see because you can understand why we have soldiers of war coming back now with PTSD. And what all the things of war had done, especially if you're a prisoner of war. And some of the scenes are very hard to watch. They're very difficult to watch. And so I want you to just be prepared. It's a great film, but it is not one for the squeamish to watch in some scenes, all right? So The Deer Hunter, I did have a chance to see it and I loved it. Now, to the last film because, and this will be the last thing I'll talk about today. And that is, I had a chance to sit down and watch the movie Airplane. This is another movie from the late 70s. This is a classic comedy film, and it is one of those films where I don't know if it would be a film that could be made today, because there are a lot of PC things, that are done today that wouldn't have been, that are done now that weren't done in that era. One of the things, but it has some of the most quotable lines in the film. And what makes the film great comedy, and what makes it really work, is the fact that wrapped around all the silliness in the script and in the filming is the fact that they had to do this with a serious face. They had to do it very, very seriously. And as a matter of fact, Robert Stack could not get the lines right. He could not get the reaction that was needed because it was a comedy, so he did it as a comedy. And everybody was getting really, really frustrated with him. And finally, Lloyd Bridges walks up to him and he goes, "You have to do it seriously, like you're doing a drama. When you read the lines like you're doing a drama, that's what makes it funny." In one scene, and let me tell you, the reason I say that is because there are two guys, there are two African-American gentlemen who talk jive through the whole film. That would not be able to be done today. As a matter of fact, Barbara Billingsley, who played Mrs. Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver, comes over and says, "I can translate," and starts speaking jive with the two African-American guys. It's one of the most hysterical scenes in the film because they got the subtitles below what they're actually saying. But that's something that I think wouldn't be able to be shown today. It would be offensive to somebody. There's another scene
or a group of people.
Or a group of people. There's another scene where a 10-year-old boy brings over a cup of coffee to a 10-year-old girl and says, "Would you like some coffee?" She goes, "Yes." And they're dressed in a suit. She's dressed in a white dress, and she's a little bonnet on. And he's like, and he goes, "How do you like your coffee?" And she goes, "Black, like my men." That.
Oh my gosh.
There's a scene where the little boy goes into the cockpit and he goes, and Peter Graves plays the pilot. I think you might know what I'm talking about. It's like,
I don't.
You ever been in the cockpit before, Billy? No, I haven't. And Peter Graves is the pilot. Goes, "You ever seen a grown man naked?" I mean, those are the things that would not be able to be done today in today's filmmaking because because people would be too offended by it. In fact, I am sure that there's a group of people who, if they were to see the movie today, would be like, "That's an offensive film. And I don't know why people are watching it, and I don't want." It is one of the greatest comedies one of the best comedies of all time because it is not a politically correct movie. It's not political, and it shows the sign of the times then, as opposed to now. If you watch some of these classic films, you will see people smoking and doing drugs and having open sex and doing
and not only that, alcohol,
drinking copious amounts of alcohol, stuff that would and saying offensive racial jokes that could not be done today. But they were done then, and there's a shift in our entertainment society that I think kind of scares me because we cannot sanitize comedy. Comedy is funny for a reason. I will tell you something, and if you don't believe me, you go rent Blazing Saddles from Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is a genius at comedy. He's
don't forget Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder, the late Gene Wilder. Oh my gosh! If anybody, I will tell you something. If I ever have a chance to sit down at the feet of Mel Brooks, I will do it because I could learn so much from the man. We are out of time. I want to thank you very much for watching me today. Go out and catch a film. There are a lot of good films out there. A lot of really good sequels out. I know Mamma Mia is playing. I haven't had a chance to see that. I'll probably want to see it. I'm still got to go to a chance to get to the theater to see Sorry to Bother You. I want to talk to you about that. That looks like it's a good film. But until then, next week I'll be back at 3 o'clock to talk to you about movies and TV and hopefully hopefully I'll have a guest on next week to talk about some local theater that's going on next week. Until then, I want to thank the beautiful Bakersfield Music Hall of Fame and Kerncast.com, Patriot Bail Bonds for sticking with me. My name is Goose. This is On With The Show. I will see you next week. Go catch a show.
Overture, curtain lights. This is it, the night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every card by heart. Overture, curtain lights. This is it, we'll hit the heights. And oh, what heights we'll hit. On with the show, this is it.